All right. Be honest. When you came in here this morning, did you look for your seat that was in the theater over there? Just raise your hand. Be honest. You did? Because I did the same. Hey, my name is Ty. I'm one of the pastors here at Grace Point Church. If you don't know, I've been gone for a while. I've taken some time off. For one, to work on Grace Point Church for a while, and then secondly, to just be a part of my family, take a little bit of vacation time. So thank you for all the men who have been leading the pulpit here and preaching each and every week faithfully, preaching the Word of God. It's not like, look, let me just be honest, it's not like you're getting second string preachers. I'm telling you what, man, those are some mighty men of God that bring a powerful Word of God, and I'm just so grateful for them. Thank you for all the men and women who have put this together this morning. If you're new to Grace Point Church, we typically meet in a theater, but they're resurfacing it. And so a theater is set up to do stuff like this. A cafeteria really is not. And so thank you all to the men and women who made this happen this morning. It was a lot of hard work, and we super duper appreciate it, okay? Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, in life, there are some things that you can be wrong at, get by with okay. Like you can be wrong in a few things in life and it not be a huge deal. But there are some things in life you really don't want to get wrong. Like it could be detrimental, okay? So just a few, maybe a couple. You can send a text to the wrong person. We've all done that, right? You can get by with that. But you can send a text to a wrong person that was intended for your spouse, and that could be something you really don't want to get wrong, right? Just saying. You can wrongly assume that you have packed everything for your trip in your luggage and get there and realize maybe you forgot something, toothbrush or whatever. Or you could have wrongly assumed that you packed your luggage only to drive 4 hours away from Las Vegas into the mountainy region of Utah where it is snow while you're wearing shorts and a t-shirt and that's all you have. And you arrive there only to see that you wrongly assumed you had your piece of luggage there. True story. I've had that happen. I spent about 3 days in the mountain in shorts and a t-shirt. It was not that fun. But anyway, so there are some things you can get wrong and some things you do not want to get wrong. Well, today we're starting this brand new series called Centered. And the idea is that all of our lives are centered upon something. Centered upon a person, an idea, a relationship, a God, whatever that looks like. All of our lives are centered on something. And this is something that we want to get right. No one will walk out of here and say, you know what, I want to center my life on something that will just lead me astray, something that will make my life stink, something that will not last to the end. Like, no one would say that, right? No one would say, I want my life to be a failure, and so I'll center it on something that will absolutely fail. So it's not like we do these things intentionally, but we need to center our lives on something of great value. See, when we have our life, the center, the core of our lives, it dictates the direction of our life, the quality of our life, the meaning of our life, the purpose of our life, the choices of our life, everything. And so today we're going to talk about what we're centered on. It's kind of like your operating system, like your OS X or OS Mountain Lion or Cougar or Cheetah or whatever it is for Apple right now. Or maybe you have a PC operating system going on. You get the blue screen of death a lot. I don't know, but it's something along. It's like it's how you function is what it is. Now, imagine that you have centered your life on something that wasn't able to carry and bear the weight of your life. Maybe it's on an idea that is it's not even an idea that's going to be fruitful and will not come to fruition. Maybe it's on a relationship, and we understand relationships are rocky and tough at certain times. Maybe it's on a job, and your job has the ebbs and flows and the layoffs and different things like that. Maybe it was your security. Maybe it was your finances. Maybe it was just the comfort and quality of your life, and those things have changed, and you're realizing that maybe that wasn't something worth or something that couldn't bear the weight of my life. Possibly you're discovering here recently that what you have your life centered upon is failing you. You can see it in the relationships. You can see it in your emotions. You can see it in your demeanor. You can see it in your hope. You can see it in all those different areas of your life. Maybe you see that. Maybe today you're here and you have absolutely no idea what to center your life upon. Maybe you're young. Maybe you're just come in high school, or maybe you're going into college or whatever, and the only thing you know to center your life on is what did mom and dad do? And so I'll just center my life upon that. Or maybe you're a young adult, maybe you're married and plowing through life, and you're just like, I really don't know what to center my life upon. Maybe some of you are Christ followers here today. You consider yourself Christians. And you would say, my life is centered upon God. But there's something different. Something has changed. Seasons have happened. The hope is not there anymore. That joy is not there anymore. That passion is not there anymore. If you got really honest, you would say, I'm kind of bored with God. And I'm kind of frustrated at the church. It's just not doing what it used to, or it's not like what it was, or things like that. And we see that maybe we can say practically or ideally that we're focused upon God. He is the center of our lives, but maybe we see some implications that is not. So no matter where you're at on the spiritual journey today, I believe God has something for you today. And I believe this, and from the Bible it says this very clearly, that God wants what's best for you, because God is creator of all, and God is the one that designed our lives, and God is the author of all, and he's the one that knows what's best for us. His ways are higher than our ways. And we see from the Bible over and over and over, and I'm going to show you a section of text today, that God wants our lives. The best thing for our lives is for our lives to be centered upon Jesus. That we are to be Jesus-centered. And we start this centered series, everything will flow from today. Because we're going to have 4 more weeks after this. We're going to say centered on these other things. But the core, it must be Jesus. It has to be Jesus. A lot of us will work from a list. If you're a Christ follower, you work from a list. You work from this list of God first, spouse if you're married second, kids third. Not a bad thing. It's got great implications. But unfortunately, if you're anything like me, it's easy for me to compartmentalize things. Because I'll just say, okay, in my spiritual life, God gets first. That usually means Sunday or religious things I do. And I can kind of check those things off in my mind. But now I move to marriage. And marriage can get a little bit discombobulated and all that because it really doesn't have a center. And so I want to center that on my wife, Angie. And then like things get a little weird there because she can't bear the weight of my life and vice versa. And then I get to the kids. And then, I try to get my approval from them about being a good dad. And things just kind of get crazy, right? What if we started working from the idea that Jesus is the center, Jesus is the core of everything, and then our marriage works out of that. Our relationships work out of that. Our jobs work out of that. Our emotions work out of that. Our feelings, everything works from that base that gives us identity and purpose and worth and all that. That's what we're proposing during this series, okay? So here's the big idea. Every week we come up with a big idea, and it's basically a summarization of the text that we're going to be in one statement. Here's what the big idea for today is this. Jesus is the center of all, and all must center on Jesus. Jesus is the center of all, and all must center on Jesus. I know this is a big statement. It's a pretty audacious statement. I didn't just come up with that on my own. The Bible really points to that over and over and over. And we think of this idea of being centered, what we center our lives on. It's not just a 21st century idea. I mean, this is the human idea. This is a humanity problem. So the book we're going to be in today is the book called Colossians in your Bible. If you open your Bible up in the middle, there's Old Testament, New Testament, and it's on the New Testament side. Colossians is actually a letter that a guy by the name of Paul wrote to a bunch of churches in an area called Colossae. And so they were struggling with this problem who is Jesus? And why should our lives be centered upon him? And they had the same struggle that we have. They were like, okay, is Jesus enough? Because that's the question we're always asking. I mean, we sing the song, Jesus is better, but is he really better? Is he really enough? And the problem they were facing in this church that he wrote this letter to was kind of these two things that we deal with as well. One, they had Jesus, they had trusted the gospel, they had been saved, they were Christians, but they thought there was something they needed to add to it because it just got a little routine, or that maybe there was false teachers coming in and telling them they needed these other things. One thing they thought they needed was these super mystical, kind of weird, crazy spiritual experiences. You know that we do that as well? Some of you have been a Christ follower for a long time. You're probably still chasing youth ministry experiences. Some of you who've moved here from out of town, you're probably still chasing that perfect church that you were at in whatever state it was. And you're still chasing that experience. When you had that high with God, when you threw your stick in the fire, burned your CDs, or made some kind of vow, whatever you did, you want that high again. That's the same thing they were wanting right there. They were like, it's Jesus plus super spiritual experiences. And then the other part of it was, it was like, the gospel's too simple. Jesus loved me, Jesus died for me, Jesus rose from the grave for me, and I just trust that and I'm saved? That's too easy. That's too simple. We need to add something to that. And so they thought, in this time, 2,000 years ago, well, we need to add some religious works to it. We need to be good enough. We need to do certain things. And so they started adding these little religious things to it. Don't we do the same? It's like the gospel is so simple. You know what? It can't be that good. It's got to be I've got to be good enough. I've got to work at it. I mean, the gospel kind of got me saved, but I need to keep myself saved. And so that's the problem that they were dealing with right here. And the cool thing about Paul is just a master writer. Plus, he's inspired by the Holy Spirit. So this is a different kind of book than like an Ernest Hemingway book or something. It's totally inspired by God. It's the words of God. And Paul has this great argument. Instead of going after those fallacies, instead of going after those problems, he focuses upon Jesus. He points them to the glory of Jesus and the majesty of Jesus and how awesome Jesus is. He shows them how Jesus is better than any of that. And so that's what he does in this text. He shows them that Jesus is the center of all, and all must be centered on him. And so that's the problem he goes through. And so we talk about this being Jesus-centered. And if you've been at Grace Point Church any length of time, we talk a lot about Jesus. I mean, what else would we talk about? The Bible is all about Jesus. We're Christian, the Christ part, it's all about Jesus. We follow Jesus. And when we talk about Jesus, when we talk about being Jesus-centered, we have to make sure we're all talking about the same Jesus. I could sit here, my wife's out of town right now, but I could sit here and describe my wife to you. And if you know my wife, what if I described her with different hair color, different eyes, different size, all that kind of stuff? You would say, that's not Angie. That's not the same Angie. We have to make sure we're talking about the same Jesus. So let me give you a scenario, and I'm not poking fun at any other religions or anything like that, so I will make sure you got me very clear on that. You can look them up online and look at their doctrinal distinctives and theology and all that, but imagine with me, if you will, you are having a dinner party at your home, and you're inviting some people over. And so at your table for dinner, you have a Mormon. It sounds like a setting of a joke. Mormon, a Muslim, and walked into a bar. No. So you have a Mormon. It's awful. A Mormon, a Muslim, a Jehovah's Witness, a theological liberal person, and I don't mean liberal politically. I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about theological. So look that term up and understand it. Your next door neighbor, just an average guy, and yourself. And so you go through this whole dinner, you ate food, it was great, you had great kind of chit-chat conversation about everybody's life and all that kind of stuff. And then it moves into politics, and it gets really weird because that's just weird. And then someone pipes up, and they're like, I got a topic for discussion. This would be me, because I'm the kid that sees the hornet's nest and says, hey, everybody, come here, look at this hornet's nest. And I smack it and then run away. And so so the question comes like, who is Jesus? Whew. Ask that question amongst the crowd. Who is Jesus? Mormon pipes up. He says this, well, let me tell you who Jesus was. Jesus is the firstborn child of Elohim. That God and Mary, Virgin Mary, had a physical sexual relationship and birthed Jesus. And Jesus was good. And for a time, they were actually, God and Mary were husband and wife. And if the good news is, if you work hard enough, you too can be sons of God like Jesus was. And then he'd say, pass the dessert, decaf, please, or something like that. Okay, so that would happen. And then the Muslim would sit there and protest and be like, no, you've got this all wrong. Jesus is just another guy like Abraham, like Moses of the Bible, like Isaiah. He was a prophet of God, but he was not God himself. In fact, he wasn't even the most important prophet. Muhammad came 500 years later. He is the most prized prophet, not Jesus. And by the way, Jesus really didn't die on a cross or anything like that. God hid him for a season. So there's no cross, no death, no atonement. For what you Christians believe is not real, and don't disagree with me. So all of a sudden, the Jehovah's Witness can't take it any longer. He says, you're both wrong. Prior to coming to earth, Jesus was the archangel Michael. And he's only a creature. He's been created. Jesus didn't last from, he wasn't always existing. He was born. He was born of a virgin, of Mary, and he was stripped of all of his spiritual, angelic nature before he became fully man. No God, fully man on earth. Jesus is not God. Would you like a track about that? I'll be by your house at 5 o'clock next Sunday, okay? Disgusted by what he perceives to be religious mythology, the theological liberal takes control of the conversation and says, you are all a bunch of fools. You are fools. This is the 21st century, for heaven's sake. All of you talk like you live in the dark ages. Common sense tells you that Jesus was naturally born of Joseph and Mary, like his earthly dad, that his surrogate dad. He was born of them. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not an atheist or anything like that. I believe that Jesus has exceptional human virtue and all that. And maybe if there is a God, agnostically, that God, adopted him as sons of God. And if we try really hard and do things like that, we can be adopted as well. But, I mean, Jesus is not God. If you believe that, you probably believe in the Tooth Fairy, Easter Bunny, and all that stuff as well. And then they get to your neighbor, and your neighbor's like, golly, I didn't know all that about Jesus. I just thought Jesus was some good guy who did good stuff, told everybody to love everybody and be nice, and they killed him for some reason. I don't know why, but if you just believe in God and be a good person, then you get to go to heaven with everybody else, right? And then everyone has said their piece, and this is what they do. They all turn and look to you as you're sipping your coffee right there. And they say, who do you say Jesus is? What a question. If you're a Christ follower, can you answer that? And maybe some of you are here and you're just exploring the claims of Christ, exploring who this Jesus is, or maybe you're here and you're going through some kind of hurt or you're going through some kind of pain or trial, and you're like, you know what, I've done everything I can do. I'm going to give this Jesus guy a try at it. I don't know much about him at all. But we all have to answer this question. Who is Jesus? Who is this guy? I mean, like, he's a big deal. I mean, there's war, there's like arguments, there's really like, who is Jesus? I believe he's the most debated person ever in the history of people. How would you answer that? I mean, as a Christian, you're saying, if you claim to be a Christian today, that my life is centered upon this guy. All my hope, my eternity is upon him. Who is he? So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk through this text, and I want to show you, I want to try to answer 3 questions. Who is Jesus? And for some of you who've been a Christ follower long, you got to watch out for your brain. Your brain's going to want to go into white noise mode of like, I know who Jesus is. He loved me. He died for me. Like, listen. You need to hear this. And for some of you that are new to this, man, you got to see this is not some ordinary guy. So I want to tell you who Jesus is. I want to let the text, Holy Spirit led, convince you that Jesus is worth centering all of our lives on. He is better. And then lastly, I want to give you some handles to grab a hold of before you leave here. Like, how do you either remain Jesus-centered or how do you center your life upon Jesus? Is that cool? That's what we'll do today, okay? So if you got a Bible, go to Colossians 1. We'll start in verse 15. I haven't preached in like 7 weeks. I feel rusty. Colossians 1:15. I feel like a kid when they first start driving, going through the suburbs and just hitting cars and mailboxes. And we'll get to this first one. It'll get better. If you don't have a Bible, we have a YouVersion app. You can go on there, type in Grace Point Vegas. Don't do it like this, though, because that's probably weird. And then we'll have the screen up there for you. We've got free Bibles at back we'd love to give you, but let me get into this. Colossians 1:15. Paul writes this. And when he says he's referring to Jesus. He's explaining who Jesus is. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. Now, here's who Jesus is and why we should center our lives on him. This is point number 1. Jesus is the center of creation. He is the center of creation. And we'll see that he's the creator, but it's all for him and by him, through him. But Jesus is the center of creation. Now, I use this term, image of God. If you were to go into my office at the Grace Point Church offices, you'll notice a few things. My desk, computer, and all that kind of stuff. But on the left, I have this ginormous cork board that covers up like the server and the electronic gibbly-goo and all that kind of stuff back there. And it's been blank for a long time. Well, while I was gone for a while, about a month or so ago, my 2 oldest daughters went in there and put up all these family pictures. It looks awesome. I just stare at it all day. It's great. Imagine if you were to come into my office or somebody were to come into my office and look at that board and find a picture of my wife, Angie. And they were to take that picture down, look at it with utter disdain, spit on it, crumple it up, rip it, throw it down, and do this with it. Let's ask a question. Would I be happy or sad? Would I be happy or very mad? And so I would want to initially have a counseling session with this person and offer him the right hand of fellowship. Why would that make me so mad? It's just a picture, right? I mean, she physically did not get hurt, right? See, that's what I know of my wife is her image. That's how I know my wife. I can look in a crowd like, that's my wife. I know that gal. I mean, that's how we know. Let's test this. Think about the person you love most in this world. What popped in your mind? Not their shoes, their face, their image. Think about the person that has wronged you, person maybe you have a little bitterness towards, the person that has hurt you. What popped in your face, in your mind? Their face. Image is important. See, the Bible right here and elsewhere teaches us that God is invisible. God is spirit. Anytime you hear language in the Bible that says God's hand moved or whatever, that's a figurative speech. God doesn't have hands. God is spirit. And so what Paul's saying right here is that when you see Jesus, what do you see? God. This is, boom. I mean, this is huge. When you see Jesus, you see God. And what Paul is guiding these believers on right here is to center their lives upon God, which is Jesus. That's what he's doing right here. One of Jesus' followers, his name was Philip, he asked Jesus, hey, show us the Father. Because if you read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, books of the Bible, Jesus is always talking about his Father in heaven, Father God, all that. And they said, hey, let me see the Father. And this is what Jesus says in John 14:9. He says, Jesus said to them, have I been with you so long and you still do not know me, Philip? Interesting. He asked to see God, and he says, you've been with me so long, you don't know me? He's saying, I'm God. But he goes on to make sure we get this. Whoever has seen me has seen the Father. How can you say, show us the Father? Do you not believe that I am in the Father and the Father is in me? The words that I say to you, I do not speak on my own authority, but the Father who dwells in me does his work. Now, we've got messages in the past about the Trinity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. That takes a long time to unpack. You can go back on our website and kind of research that. But we see right here that Jesus is the image of God. He is God. Jesus is God. He goes on in this Colossians text, talks about the firstborn of all creation. And when we read that, we're like, maybe the Jehovah's Witnesses have it right. Jesus was created. That's what it means by firstborn, right? No. Firstborn is what Paul is meaning when he says firstborn right here, is that Jesus has all the rights and privileges, meaning this, that Jesus ranks the highest, that Jesus is first. And he's going to go later on in this text, talk about the supremacy and preeminence, this grandeur, this awesomeness of Jesus, but that's what he's talking about. So he is the firstborn of all creation. Jesus is the center of all, and all must center on Jesus. He's the image of God. He is God. When you see and think Jesus, think God. Let's go on. This is good stuff. Wait till you get to verse 16. It's insane. All right, now watch these little words here. For by Jesus, all things were created. Now, if you know anything about the Bible is not originally written in English. It's originally written in Greek. And he used the word all right there. Do you know what the word all means in Greek? All. It's crazy, huh? It means all. And if we didn't clue in on that, we'll let Paul finish the statement. He says this, for by him all things were created in heaven and on earth. I don't know about covered it all. Well, let's keep going. Visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through him and for him. Jesus is the center of creation. All things were created by him, through him, and for him. Jesus is the creator. I mean, when you read, if you know anything about the Bible, let me help you with it if you don't. And the first book of the Bible is called Genesis, which means beginnings. And the first four words, if any of you are Christ followers here and you know the first four words of Genesis, what are they? In the beginning. When I say 4 words, 3 words. In the beginning. I'm from Kentucky, sorry. In the beginning. 3 words. It's that mathematics thing. It's hard. In the beginning. The fourth word, God. In the beginning, God. There we go. I got it. It was 4 words. And then when you go to the first book of the New Testament, which is the book of John, John gives a commentary of Genesis. So he explains Genesis. Have you ever noticed it? Genesis 1, the first little bit, and John 1. John is explaining, giving commentary for Genesis 1. And he says, in the beginning was the Word, capital W. What's he talking about right there? He calls Jesus the Word. Jesus is the creation agent. Like he is how creation happened. It is through Jesus. Jesus is the creator God. Jesus did not come into existence. This even proves the fact that Jesus wasn't born like, he doesn't have a beginning. No, Jesus is the one that started the beginning. Before the beginning was Jesus. Before there was time, there was Jesus. There has never not existed Jesus. Jesus has always been there. That's what he's talking about. Why is this important? Well, if Jesus is the creator, he gets to determine the purpose of what he's created, the value of what he's created, the identity of what he's created. I mean, we get this, right? Imagine you create something. Any artist in here, like you like to paint, sculpt, and do stuff like that? Music? Anybody? Is everybody awake? Okay. Imagine, if you will, you painted a beautiful picture of a dog. Look at my pretty puppy, right? And I look at it and be like, that is a crazy looking unicorn you got there. And you're like, dude, it's not a unicorn, it's a dog. I'm like, man, when I look at that, it's a unicorn, and I feel like riding that thing and go hunt some Oompa Loompas or something. I don't know. Like, we're going to go have fun on a unicorn. And you're like, you're being an idiot. It is a dog. Well, who gets to determine the painting? Me or you? You. The artist, the creator. It's huge. Man, I could like preach. I'm going to preach for a while today because it's my first time back, so get ready. But if I could go on and on and on, we would talk about how huge it is that God created you and gives you identity and gives you value. And it's like when you feel like garbage, I wanted to use another word. When you feel like garbage, you have value because God created you. Don't listen to anybody else. Unless they're telling you what God says already, you have value. And so it's important. What else? Well, as a creator, you have authority. You have a lot of authority. I mean, you created everything. Imagine the authority you get when you create something out of nothing. Do you know that God didn't like take stuff and make stuff out of it? There was nothing. It's like, even to say there was a nothing, it's nothing. It's hard to put our frame around that. I mean, you can literally create nothing out of nothing. You cannot do it. Try it. What can you create out of nothing? You can only create a substance that God already created, right? And some of you can make air, but it came from somewhere, I guess. I don't know. Think about that. It'll hit you at lunch. So God has this power of creator. I mean, so if Jesus is the creator God, and he has authority, he has this power, he has all this, why would I want to center my life around something that was created? Why would I want to center my life around something else that has less power? It doesn't seem right. It doesn't seem logical to do that. Jesus is the creator. He's the center of all, and all must center on him. And look down at verse 17. This is really cool. He says, he is before all things, just meaning Jesus is supreme. He's before all things. What are all things? All things. People, place, thing. All things. And he is the one, he says, in him all things hold together. Like, this is a literal statement. The molecules in this table are going around really fast. So we learned in 5th grade science. And there's a reason why this is sticking together and not just like exploding. There's a reason why the skin stays on my body. There's a reason why, air is the way it is. There's a reason why the earth is on a certain axis and rotation, and the oxygen and whatever else is in oxygen levels are the same, so the world doesn't blow up when you light a match. There's a reason why. It's because there's a creator, God, Jesus of the universe, holding all things together. Well, what does that mean to me? Well, God makes sense of the chaos. Think about your life. The chaos in your life. When you center it upon a God who can manage the chaos of this world, he can be there in the chaos of your life. Why would we center our lives on something else that doesn't hold the universe together? The stars in the sky, the moon, the earth, like all of it. He holds it to get down to the last atom or whatever smaller than that. He holds all that together. This is huge. Jesus is the center of that. We can have a man-viewed center of the world where we see everything through our lens, or we can have a Jesus-centered view of the world. When you adopt, and when Jesus is at the center and you start seeing the world through the lens of Jesus, it changes everything. You see that everything is a signpost pointing to Jesus. You see that everything was created by him, for him, and through him, as the text says. It changes everything. I like what C.S. Lewis says. C.S. Lewis is so awesome. He says this: God, he is the inventor. We are only the machine. He is the painter. We are the picture. We got to get this right. We're not God. Newsflash, we are not God. Okay, let's keep going. Verse 18. He says, and he is the head of the body. So now Paul's moving to another idea. He's the head of the body. Well, what in the world is the body? Well, Paul gives it to us right there, puts the ball on the tee. We just need to swing at it. He says he is the head of the body, the church. So he's the head of the church. So not only is Jesus the center of creation, but he's the center of the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. Here's some really good news for you today. Are you ready for this good news? There's a lot of good news today. Here's some good news for you today. Jesus is the head of Grace Point Church. That's glorious news. Ty's not the head of it. The elder's not the head of it. You are not the head of it. Jesus is the head of Grace Point Church. Jesus is the head of every church that follows, loves, worship Jesus. He is the head of all churches who existed and will exist until he returns. Jesus is the head of the church. This is great. Jesus is the originator of the church, not man. I know in spite of what History Channel says or whatever you read, like Jesus created church. Read Matthew chapter 16. He's the one that started. This is not some kind of institution that we thought, hey, let's put together a church and be a big cosmic killjoy for everybody and restrain, society and all that. No. Jesus created church. We are the hope of the world until Jesus returns. We are putting order right in the world until Jesus returns. That's why we do Servolution. We want to love our community in such a way that hopefully they'll love Jesus and they'll see the Creator through us and they'll love Him as well with us. That's why we do these things. See, the head right here means leader. And he says head and calls it body. And it just makes me think that Jesus is the head, and wherever he is looking, we as the body, and let me tell you, your elders and staff, we want to be going wherever Jesus is looking. We pray for that. We talk about that. We do everything like, Jesus, what do you want? Jesus, where do you want us to go? What should we do? And it's been awesome. Jesus has done some amazing things through how long has Grace Point Church been around? About 8 years now. Jesus has done some amazing things. He's taken us through some major turmoil and struggles and grown us outside of that, grown us closer and healthier. He has saved people in here. He has brought marriages back together. He has redeemed people. He has changed a culture around us. I really believe that we're starting to change Aliante and this pocket of region up here. God's using Grace Point Church to do that. I think that is awesome. I think people are starting to understand their purpose. We've seen people leave their occupations and come into ministry. We've seen people leave military and get on mission with God. We see people in their occupation get on mission with God. We've seen people live in community. We've seen enemies become friends. We've seen so much. Well, is that because we're awesome? No. It's Jesus. That's why. We have so much great things coming up. Jesus is doing some awesome things and leading us in a great direction. This September, next month, there's a game changer coming. Big game changer. We're going to start letting everybody, we got a 5-week series on what's going to be happening in the future Grace Point Church. We're getting ready to go global. We're getting ready to go do missions. We're going to be over in another part of the world. I'll tell you later. We're going to in orphanage and do some church planning over there. It's going to be amazing. We're getting ready to start a theological institute within Grace Point Church where the average person can come in and learn and grow in their theology and their understanding of the Bible, their understanding of God. It's going to be a really a well-planned-out course. It's going to be amazing. We have all kinds of stuff going on. Why are we doing this? Because we can fill up your calendar? No, this is where Jesus is leading us. This is where his word is guiding us. His Holy Spirit is leading us. This is good. We all must be centered upon Jesus. It's good. But, man, everything in us wants to be focused on us. If you're anything like me, I'm at church today, so I'll be honest with you. I want to be focused on me all the time. I want to be the center of the universe. I want everything to be according to my preferences and all that. And here's what happens. We have a difficult time with church. And I'll say church not as the people, but church as the organization. We'll say, I want this type of music. I want this type of preaching. I want preaching to be this long or this long. I'm sorry, we're going to go long today. I want my preaching to be something like that. I want programs. I want, different kind of ministries. Ministries are good, and those are great things, but I want these programs. We must have these programs. If you do not give me what I want, I will leave. And what happens is we begin to enter the church in this consumeristic mindset that says, it treats it like a Target or a restaurant. If you don't offer the services and the goods and all that stuff that I want, I'll go shopping somewhere else. And I think we should be very careful of this. If you're selecting a church, you need to pray. God, where would you lead me? And then you need to ask a few questions. Is the church all about Jesus? Is it all about Jesus? Is Jesus the hero of that church? Is Jesus the center of that church? Once you get that information down, then work out of that. That's the most important question. Is the church all about Jesus? Because if it's not, then what are they doing? What's the purpose? I mean, of course, we can play man-centered around here and just be all about you and all about your problems, all about kind of stuff, and that's just getting things backwards. It's kind of like we can be all about your problems and your hang-ups, your habits and all those kind of things. We can be all about that, and then we'll sprinkle a little Jesus in the back and call it good. Moralistic, therapeutic deism. It make me feel better, tell me how to be good and all that. And what I am proposing, and I believe the Bible screams over and over and over and over, is center upon Jesus, and the implications of everything else will flow. It's not saying your life will be perfect. It's going to be a wreck. But I'm saying center on Jesus. There's hope, there's meaning, there's purpose, relationships start to make sense, it starts to change everything. I mean, what the best thing that we can do each and every week is remind ourselves of the gospel. Remind ourselves, because Ty, you talk about Jesus a lot. All these preachers around, all they do is talk about Jesus. Can we talk about something else? No. No. If we talk about something else, then it's pointless. It's a weekly reminder. We'll talk about that in a minute. It's a time for us to get together and sing songs to Jesus. It's time for us to get together and talk about Jesus. And if you're a first-time guest new, you're like, well, that's weird. Well, guess who we want you to know? Jesus. We think about you all the time. We pray for you all the time. We're like, man, we just pray people will come in here and meet Jesus. That's the best thing you need. You're fixing your problems is not your greatest problems. Jesus is what you need. We believe this over and over. He changes everything. Our churches must be fully centered on Jesus and his work, or else death and emptiness is certain, regardless of the worship style or sermon series. Worship style and sermon series don't matter in the grand scheme of things. They don't matter. Centered on Jesus matters. Without the gospel, everything in the church is meaningless and even dead. But I don't believe that. Read the Bible. I don't know what to tell you. Like that's what it says clearly. So Jesus is center of all. We must be centered on him. He is the center of the church. Look at verse 19. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell. It's not like Jesus was walking around like God was like, oh, good God, just put my dwelling in him. No, it means that God dwells in Jesus because Jesus is fully God and fully man. It goes on to verse 20 and says, and through him to reconcile himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of the cross. That's weird language. Let's just be honest. You read the Bible, sometimes things are weird. You like peace through blood. That I don't have a frame of reference for it. God is reconciling everything back to himself. Since the fall, since we sinned, Adam and Eve, and all the way down to us, everything has been apart from God. Now he's reconciling all things back, and he's doing it with his blood. Why blood? You ever wonder? I mean, on the cross, Jesus shed his blood for us. And it's where justice of God, because we sinned against a holy God and somebody had to pay the penalty, where the justice was poured out on Jesus and his great love for us was poured out on Jesus so we may receive it, his love. And the reason why blood, back in Old Testament days, a few thousand years ago, they used to make these things called covenants, promises to one another. It's basically a promise, a pact. It's bigger than an agreement. It's a promise. And if you had two warring tribes that were against one another, but they wanted to come together and make peace, they would get together and they'd walk through the agreements of peace, and then they would take an animal and they would cut it in half. Weird. And they would split it open. And then once they would do this, once they made their agreements, they would both walk in between the animals. And they're saying if one of us back out or don't hold up to the agreement, then whatever happens to the animal, may it happen to us and our people. And so there's this guy in the Old Testament, very important guy. He's kind of a patriarch, a really main guy in the Old Testament. His name is Abraham. You look this up in Genesis 12 through 15 or so. And he comes to Abraham, and nothing was really special about Abraham. Abraham was worshiping false god and all that, and God comes to him and says, I will make you a great nation. And that's where the nation of Israel comes from, just for you history buffs there. I will make you a great nation. And this time he's old, he's got no kids or anything like that. He gives him a promise. He said, I'll make your nation so great it'll be more than the stars in the sky you can count, more than the sand on the seashore. Big deal. Makes his covenant with him. And then the animal was slain. And God walked through the animal. But Abraham didn't. Why? Because Abraham would fail. Abraham would not keep it up. And so I believe from that, the understanding of that is this, is God was saying, you're going to fail, and I'll take the penalty for your failure. That'll happen to me, and that's where God, Jesus, came on the cross to make peace by his blood. It was the agreement that God made. And so this is who Jesus is. He is the center of the redeemed, the center of the reconciled, only by the blood that was shed on the cross to make forgiveness of sin. That's how we retain that. Jesus is the center of the church. He's the center of all, and all must be centered on Jesus. So, that should be enough. God, Jesus is creator, Jesus is center of the church. We should just all fall down and worship him right now. That should be it. But let's just bring it home. Because here's the question we all ask. Every Sunday we ask this question, so what? What about me? It's okay. So what about you? How do you live a life that is Jesus-centered? How do you, if you're a Christ follower, remain Jesus-centered? Because I'll just be honest with you, my heart wants to go off to everything else all the time, so I'll be the honest guy here. My heart is, well, I'll stay centered on Jesus, I'll stay centered on Jesus, but then it just strays elsewhere at times. How do we stay centered upon Jesus, or how do you become centered on Jesus? No matter where you're at on the spiritual journey today, if you're not a follower of Jesus, you're a follower of Jesus, you've been following Jesus a long time, this can help. You ready? Here's some handles. Number one, how do you stay Jesus-centered, or how do you become Jesus-centered? Rehearse the story. rehearse this story. What story am I rehearsing? We have to understand we need to rehearse this story because we have gospel amnesia for some reason. We all do. It's like we forget the good news. We forget how good it is. We forget our new identity. We forget all that all the time. We are a very forgetful people. That's why we gather on Sundays and remind one another. That's why we gather in community groups to remind one another. That's why we have to constantly preach that gospel to ourselves. Why? Because no one talks to you more than you. You're in your head all the time. I know this. I'm a human too. I'm just in my head all the time. And we preach to ourselves a false gospel, a bad gospel. We're not good enough. We don't measure up. We got to try harder and all that kind of stuff. And we need to rehearse the gospel. Look what he says in the text, verse 21. And you. So we see him starting this new section. He's saying, and you. So he's coming right to you. Who once were alien and hostile in mind, doing evil deeds. So we want to believe that we are neutral to God before we come to God. We want to believe for some reason God is like this little kid out in the forest, and he's lost his compass, looking around, God is lost, and we go find God. I found God. We think he's lost. God is not lost at all. We believe that we're neutral to God, and we're just not on speaking terms with God, but, I'm kind of age now or whatever. I better start taking my life serious and add a little God to it, so now I'm on speaking terms with God. We're good. The Bible tells us something totally different. It tells us that we were alien, hostile, even doing evil deeds. It says we were enemies of God. You're like, no, man, I'm a nice guy. I'm like Ned Flanders. Hi, diddly do. I mean, it's all good. You're not. You're not. I wasn't. I'm still not a nice guy, but I wasn't. We're hostile, doing evil deeds. But then he says, and he uses this, it's so cool. He uses this past tense. You once were. We have to remind ourselves that story, the God in us story, the Jesus in you story. I once was. I once was. He says, but now, he has now, verse 22, I love that, you once now. He is now reconciled in his body of flesh by his death in order to present you holy and blameless and above reproach. You have to rehearse this story to yourself over and over and over. Oh, I remember what I used to be. See, I got saved. I became a follower of Jesus at the age of 23. Grew up non-Christian home. Jesus was not on my radar at all. And got saved, and so when I remind myself of the story, when I rehearse the story, I go all the way back. I'm like, man, I remember those teenage years. Oof. I remember those young adult years. I remember when I was rebellious toward God, like in just every way possible. I remember what it looked like not having hope. I remember what it looked like when I was the center of the universe and I was failing miserably at it. I remember when I put so much weight on my wife, you better be my God, and crushed her and she likewise. I remember when having kids, well, that'll give me what I need. They'll complete me when they didn't. I remember that. That was no good. However, I remember when I trusted the gospel. I remember when there was life change. I remember when God just started like messing my life up what I thought. I remember when God did all that. I remember what God's done year after year after year in my life. I was like, okay, Jesus, you're still there. Okay, Jesus, you're still working. Okay, Jesus, this is happening. So you have to rehearse that good news. If you're a Christ follower, you have to rehearse that over and over. Why? You will get discouraged. Some of you are living in discouragement right now because you're not rehearsing that good news. You thought that good news just got you saved. It's kind of the front door, and you're not using it as a pathway. That's what it is. It's all of life. You have to rehearse it over and over. Why? Don't miss this. Look what he says right here. He has now reconciled you in order to present you holy and blameless and above reproach. Who in here feels holy, blameless, and above reproach? Probably none of you. I don't. This is the work he's doing. Jesus is saying, I'm going to present you this way. That means I'm not finished with you. This is good news. You need to say that over and over and over in your mind because you're going to fail, you're going to slide, you're going to make a mess of things, you're going to do all that and say, Jesus is not finished with me. Over and over. Why? Paul says right here, he's going to present you holy and blameless and above reproach. He's going to do the work. He's still working in you. Some of you today, like, well, Ty, I don't have a story. There is no Jesus in me. You can have one today. Today. Jesus wants to meet you today. The creator God of the heaven, the head of the church, the center of Christians, he wants to meet you today. The draw inside of you is not like slick preaching. It's the Holy Spirit saying, God wants you. Today you can have that story. At the end, we'll have people at their prayer point that would love to talk to you and just share the gospel with you. Come over to my house tonight at 5:30 or whatever. Was it 5? I don't know what time it is. Just come to my house. I'll tell you all about Jesus. We can sit and have coffee and talk about it all night. I don't care. Jesus wants you. You can have that story, but we must rehearse the story. Jesus is not finished with you. Some of you are saying, well, how could God love me since I do blank? He can. He will. And he'll start to change you when you center your life upon him. What else? Students, also, make sure you know this. Students, some of you are waiting to become adults and responsible before you follow Jesus. Don't wait. Don't wait. Follow Jesus now. Right now. See young people all throughout the Bible doing amazing things that God working through them. Don't wait. Follow Jesus now. You can be the pace setter in your home. I've seen that happen so many times. Look, the world wants to be reconciled. Deep down inside of you today, if you do not follow Jesus, you want to be reconciled. Ernest Hemingway, he wrote this short story called Capital of the World. It was written in Madrid. And in that time, Paco was like the most famous name going. It was like the name John. And there was an old man who wanted to be reconciled to his son by the name of Paco. They'd been enemies for years, really don't know why. Maybe the teenager was disrespectful and he ran away, or maybe they had a big falling out. I mean, we don't know. All we know is the father wants to be reconciled to his son, Paco. So the father put an ad in the paper in the personal section, and he wrote these 3 sentences. Paco, meet me in the Hotel Montana at noon on Tuesday. All is forgiven, signed, Papa. 3 sentences. The next Tuesday at noon, the father went to the hotel and noticed police cars and this huge ruckus going on there, like crowds. He didn't know what was going on. Here's what happened. Nearly 800 Pacos showed up. Our heart, you've been created by a God that wants to be in a relationship with you, and your heart just cries of like, I want to be in that relationship. All is forgiven. Go to the Father. Jesus paid it. Be reconciled. Jesus isn't finished with you. Let's finish this text out. I'm going to hurry up. Verse 23, he says, if indeed you continue in the faith. So how do we stay Jesus-centered? Well, we need to rehearse the story. And he says, if indeed you continue the faith. Now, what that means is this. It doesn't mean like if, well, if you do good. It's Paul, this assumption that you truly follow Jesus. Like, I'm assuming that you do that. And so he says you continue in faith. Now, faith is an interesting word. Great word, but an interesting word. Very misunderstood word. I mean, we can have faith in a lot of different things. But what does biblical faith mean? It means belief in something that you do not see now. That this belief is so deep and you so trust this belief that our lives, our choices, everything is centered upon the object of that belief. Your decisions and choices in life and everything is based upon that object. So what do you have faith in? Where do your choices spring from? Self-preservation, self-advancement, or Jesus? So here's what I believe helps us stay centered or keeps us centered, is continuing obedience. When we have faith has movement to it. Faith has a reaction to it. Faith has an effect to it. It's called obedience. We don't talk about obedience in churches anymore, but obedience to God. Paul tells them to continue in faith. Faith and obedience are these closely related. Faith means you trust. It's if we trust God, we'll obey him no matter what. I mean, you realize that life has a lot of ups and downs. Relationships are good for a season. They're tough in other seasons. Marriages have problems. How do I know your marriage has a problem? Because you're married. I've been married almost 20 years. I know. And they have problems. They have good times and bad times. Work's great at times, terrible in other seasons. Our health is like that as well. Our emotions, my goodness, are positive and negative. We're feeling secure. We feel like everything's chaotic. We do all these things. Both of these seasons will start testing what you're centered upon. When the things are good, usually start testing what you center your life upon. Is it because of your accolades, your work's going well and all that? You think about how good you are. You think about how good it is. You start to enjoy its security, and you start putting your trust, you center your life on that security and comfort and way of life and quality of life. Good things can become God things, and we call that an idol. But a lot of times it really happens when bad times make us chase after other things to help keep us stable or to anchor us when our faith begins to slip. Honestly, when life happens, here's what we do. We a lot of times give us permission to do stupid stuff. Say stupid things, to be hurtful, to hurt others, to just act like an idiot. We do. We all do that. We'll center our lives on something else and give ourselves permission. Instead of obeying God, even in the bad times and the hard times, we want to choose something else. And here's what we do. We worry. But doesn't God command us not to worry? We get jealous of others. We start looking at their lives, and their lives are awesome, their lives are better, and we start making envious statements like, must be nice. Look at their marriage, must be nice. Look at their way of life, must be nice. And we start getting all jealous. When the Bible tells us to be content in all things, it's a command. We start looking for temporary fixes. We have marriage problems. We're like, you know what? Porn will help for this season. Or flirting around the office, that'll help for this season when God commands us to be faithful within our marriages. We look for other ways. We start disliking our realities, and so we start to try to escape our reality by adding a little more. A little more can hurt sometimes. There's moderation, but then we can go to extremes. A little more food, a little more alcohol, a little more substance. That's helping me cope through this difficult season. We give ourselves permission to do dumb things. That's what we do. See, it's in those moments that our faith is tested will determine what we center our lives upon. And here's what happens in our hearts. We say things like this: God, you are not good. We would never say that out loud, but we'll say, God, you're not good. God, you can't be trusted. God, I'm not living the life I wanted to live or expected to live, so I'm going to take control, and I'm going to center it upon me, and I'm going to make things happen for me because you're not making them happen. See, although our circumstances will change, God never changes. And you will go through hard times, and God is there. And those hard times sometimes are produced or happen to produce a deeper faith, a deeper trust, and they're painful. But see, we must continue in obedience. We have to say that obedience is better. It is from God. It is not optional. See, you know your life is being centered upon Jesus, then no matter what happens, no matter what the consequences are, no matter how much pain it caused you, no matter what it costs whatsoever, I will obey. My discomfort doesn't matter. I will obey. My status, my reputation doesn't matter. I'll be made fun. I will obey. Over and over and over. See, we think God is some cosmic killjoy. Let me ask you this. What does God gain by your life being difficult through obedience? What does God gain of robbing you of pleasure and all that? God's not some angry little kid in heaven with a magnifying glass burning ants, and you're the ant. God knows what's best for you. Can we just agree that God's ways are higher than our ways, and we don't understand the bad that happens in our life, and it's a good thing that they're there because they're producing something in me that I could not even produce in myself? That God causes or God allows things to happen in suffering because it's for my good and for his glory. Well, I'll obey no matter what. No matter what. Let me finish with this. Verse 23. If indeed you continue in faith, stable and steadfast. So he uses these words, stable and steadfast, not shifting from the hope of the gospel that you have heard. You see, he's talking to believers. He's like, be stable and steadfast. Don't shift from the gospel that you heard. How are we going to do that? We need more gospel. We need to hear it more, which has been proclaimed in all creation under heaven, and of which I, Paul, became a minister. Let me give this last thing here. Last thing I would tell you to be God-centered is maintain your bearing. Military people, you've heard this one before. This is a new term for me. I've been going to some military stuff, and it's been awesome. I was military dumb until I moved to Las Vegas. You guys are amazing. Gals are amazing. But every time I go to a military thing, you guys stand like this. Like your thumbs pointing down all that. And so I'm at one, and I think I was in a suit. I was doing something. I don't remember what I was doing. And so I'm all sloppy standing like that, and they do that. I'm like, yeah, man. I stand like it. And from what I understand is to maintain a focus, to maintain a structure about you that won't waver no matter what happens. You're going to go through storms. You're going to go through hell. Struggling's coming. If you are not suffering right now, suffering will come to you. Suffering will visit you. And you better maintain your bearing. That means you get knocked down, you get back up and focus on Jesus. That means life is going to happen. You focus on Jesus. I believe this is exactly what he's talking about. I think that's one of the most attractive things about Christianity. It's when Christians, it sounds morbid, when Christians suffer and they fall and get knocked down and they get back up and they have hope. Man, that's attractive. That's good stuff. I heard a pastor say this one time. He said, when you feel like you can't take any more, look to Jesus and take some more. How so? Because Jesus was fully God and fully man. The Bible says that he was tempted in every way we've been tempted, tried in every way we've been tried, yet without sin. And it says that he can sympathize with us. Whenever you feel like you can't take any more of that marriage, whenever you feel like you can't take any more of that emotion, whenever you feel like you can't take any more of the depression, you feel like you can't take any more of the situation, the suffering, whatever it is, look to Jesus. Take some more. Maintain your bearing. Look, we have an option to center our lives on so many things. My appeal to you is, why would we want to center it on anything else? Jesus is better. Better than any person, better than any idea, better than any finance, better than anything. Let's center our lives upon Jesus.